If the fluid reality is what we were designed for, and if the door is reachable from inside the current condition, then how did we end up here, in this density, with a magic so far gone that most of the world's inhabitants cannot even imagine its return? And why do we so rarely even hear about those who have found their way back? Likewise, Taoist internal alchemists absolutely pursued what we would call paranormal capacity as a marker of progress. The accounts of Taoist masters include bilocation, physical transformation, and the ability to move through solid objects. What if the solidity of this world is, at its foundation, a function of how completely its inhabitants are convinced of that solidity? This world is not the only layer of reality that exists. At some point in the distant past, this world was fluid. What we call magic was ordinary. The ancient stories and records describe a reality that was alive in a way ours is not, responsive in a way ours has forgotten, and permeable in ways our current sciences declare impossible. The biblical record alone catalogues it without apology. Water turned to wine, the sea becoming solid ground, the dead walking back into their lives. By that point in history, these were already astonishing exceptions. That the exceptions themselves have now vanished entirely tells you something about the direction we're travelling in. Something changed, and the question of what changed it and why is not a historical curiosity. It is the most important question anyone on this path can ask. This is the third video in the Light Body series, and it stands on its own. The earlier two established the ground, cross-cultural evidence for the light body that survives any serious attempt to explain it away, and the Gospel of Thomas as a technical protocol whose opening line states the destination without flinching. Whoever finds the interpretation will not taste death. What neither of those videos could yet address is the field in which we are operating. Because the question of why this transformation has become invisible cannot be separated from a harder question. What kind of reality are we trying to accomplish it inside? Certain lineages still hold this as a living aim. There are Vajrayana practitioners for whom rainbow body is not mythology but an expected destination, and the same is true in specific Taoist and yogic traditions. The knowledge has not entirely disappeared. But in the broader world, and especially across the entire Western spiritual landscape, this transformation has become unthinkable. The New Age speaks of ascension, but in a form so diluted it barely shares a name with what these traditions actually described. The goal has been forgotten so completely that most seekers no longer know there is anything to forget. The world we inhabit does not merely treat this transformation as improbable. It is, as we are about to see, structured in ways that make it nearly impossible. And before the protocol can be walked, that architecture has to be seen for exactly what it is. A number of traditions, despite their differences, that preserve the path to the light body operated from the same foundational recognition. This world is not the only layer of reality that exists. It is one configuration of a larger field, and it is a very dense, very contracted configuration. The Gnostics called it the flawed emanation, a world shaped by the demiurge, a layer of reality so convincing in its solidity that its inhabitants mistake it for the totality of what exists. The Hindu traditions named this same recognition Maya, a term that runs through the Upanishads and reaches its most direct expression in Advaita Vedanta, the phenomenal world as a projection superimposed over the only thing that is actually real. The Tibetan traditions called it samsara, not in the vague sense that word usually carries in Western usage, but as the cycle of conditioned existence, the dream that mistakes itself for the only reality in which the perceiver has forgotten what they are. The Buddhist doctrine of sunyata, emptiness, approaches the same territory from a different angle. Nothing in the phenomenal world has the fixed, independent existence it appears to have from within ordinary perception. The Neoplatonists, particularly Plotinus, describe the material world as the furthest and most degraded emanation from the One, or the level of existence where the original light has dimmed almost to nothing. The Sufi mystics within Islam describe the world as a veil drawn over divine reality, and the entire arc of the mystical path as the progressive thinning of that veil. In the controversial framework presented by Carlos Castaneda, it is described as a particular fixation of something they called the assemblage point, the place in our energetic field where awareness locks into a single description of the world and mistakes that description for the world itself. And even Yeshua called it the world in a tone that consistently distinguished it from a kingdom he claimed was already here, spread out upon the earth, though men do not see it. The world we experience as solid, final, and complete is none of those things. It is but one configuration of a larger field. The yogic and tantric lineages are the most explicit. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali catalogue specific abilities, called siddhas, that develop as a consequence of advanced practice. The ability to become invisible, to levitate, to know past and future, and to enter other bodies. In classical, yogic, and tantric texts, these are presented as real capacities that emerge naturally as the practitioner's relationship to material reality changed. Likewise, Taoist internal alchemists absolutely pursued what we would call paranormal capacity as a marker of progress. The accounts of Taoist masters include bilocation, physical transformation, and the ability to move through solid objects. And then the Tibetan tradition has an entire category of practice called tumo, oriented toward demonstrating mastery over physical processes, generating extraordinary body heat in freezing conditions as a measurable sign that the practitioner's relationship to the physical body has changed fundamentally. The rainbow body itself is the ultimate expression of this. Additionally, the Neoplatonists and Hermeticists were deeply interested in what they called theurgy, the ability to affect the material world through consciousness, working at a higher level of reality. And finally, the Sufi tradition has its own accounts of karamat, miraculous gifts that manifested in advanced masters. Where they diverge is in how much emphasis they place on these capacities. Some traditions treated them as meaningful signs of progress. Others, Buddhism most prominently, warned against becoming attached to them as destinations in themselves, because that attachment could become its own trap. But the underlying recognition is consistent across all of them. As the practitioner's perception of solidity changes, their relationship to what solidity can do to them changes with it. What all of them described is this: there are two realities available to us. One is the densified layer, where matter behaves as if it was solid, where the rules of cause and effect, gravity, decay, and death appear absolute. The other is the fluid layer, where what we call magic is simply the natural responsiveness of a field that was never solid to begin with, and where the limitations that seemed final dissolve as we remember what we actually are. The difference between the two realities is not what they are made of. It is the degree to which we, as the dreamers of this dream, have forgotten that we are dreaming. Once we awaken from the dream and see that what surrounds us is a configuration of awareness rather than an independent solidity, we move from being the effect of our experience to being its cause. We no longer simply react to a world that happens to us. We begin to participate in shaping it from a deeper place. This is what Yeshua was demonstrating. Not divine privilege that belonged to him alone, but the mechanics of what becomes available when the dreamer remembers what they are. When he turned water to wine, walked on the surface of the sea, and appeared inside a sealed room after the resurrection, he was not breaking the laws of reality. He was demonstrating that the laws we experience as absolute are the operating parameters of a single layer, and that the dreamer who has reached the fluid layer is no longer fully subject to them. And here is a question that modern science does not fully answer. What is gravity? Its behavior can be described with extraordinary mathematical precision, from falling objects to the motion of galaxies. Modern physics explains it as the curvature of space-time produced by mass, a model that works with stunning accuracy. And yet, when we ask what gravity is at its deepest level, the answer is less settled. We are describing it with great success, but the underlying reality it points to may still hold unanswered questions. What if gravity is the weight of collective attention? What if the solidity of this world is, at its foundation, a function of how completely its inhabitants are convinced of that solidity? Our belief in this level of density may be precisely what holds it together. The field may be far more fragile than we think it is, because when enough dreamers awaken inside the dream at once, the dream begins to respond differently. This is why the traditions that develop the most detailed maps of the light-body transformation place significant emphasis on mastering the dreaming state, what the modern world refers to as lucid dreaming or astral projection. Though those are often treated as separate phenomena, they are really the same capacity approached from different angles. What matters here is the underlying principle. In Castaneda's framework, Mastering the dreaming state was the central discipline of the entire path. Through sustained practice, the dreamer learns to become fully conscious while the body sleeps, developing what that lineage called the dreaming body, an energetic structure capable of perceiving and operating in realities beyond the physical. Many, like myself, do not believe that this is a metaphor or a psychological exercise. The dreaming body in that framework is the light body itself. The light body is something that must be built while still alive, through practice. The dreaming discipline is where that construction begins. The Tibetan dream yoga traditions developed parallel methods. Practitioners train to maintain continuous awareness through every stage of the sleep cycle, including the dreamless depths that most of us pass through in complete unconsciousness. The practitioner who can hold awareness there begins to recognize the same luminous quality in the sleep state that advanced waking practice reveals. And the division between dreaming reality and waking reality begins to look less absolute. What both traditions are pointing toward is the same thing. The fluid layer is not somewhere else. It is reachable from inside the body you currently inhabit in the state you enter every night. The door is already there. If the fluid reality is what we were designed for, and if the door is reachable from inside the current condition, then how did we end up here, in this density, with a magic so far gone that most of the world's inhabitants cannot even imagine its return? And why do we so rarely even hear about those who have found their way back? The Genesis account describes humanity dwelling in a state of intimate relationship with the divine, in a garden where the boundaries between the human and the sacred were not fixed in the way they are now. 2 trees stood at the center of that garden. The tree of life, which represented the path to the original condition, the door that stood open, not yet taken, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The fall was a descent deeper into the dream of physicality, a progressive forgetting of what we are that hardened the field around us with each generation that forgot a little more. The tree of death delivered exactly what it promised, and the fall is not a finished event. The descent continues with moments of reversal and recovery, but with the general direction unchanged for a very long time. The densification, as I said, is not a finished event. A field this contracted does not sustain itself naturally. Coherence tends toward restoration unless the conditions that prevent it are continuously present. A dreamer who begins to remember that they are dreaming starts to alter their relationship to the dream, and the rigid framework begins to loosen. This is precisely what the densification cannot sustain. So what emerged from the densification wove itself into every dimension of the inhabited world. Cooperation has been displaced by competition. Abundance has been replaced with manufactured scarcity. Wonder has been replaced with sustained anxiety. Too many things run counter to what the vessel needs, keeping the collective level of available energy low enough that the deeper perception required for awakening remains out of reach. Because here is something most do not understand. The more energy we have, the more we perceive. The more we perceive, the more we understand. The more we understand, the less the dream can hold us. Available energy is not one factor among many on the path to the light body. It is the most important factor. A person with genuine surplus can sit with what is uncomfortable, sustain difficult practices over time, penetrate the kind of dense and layered material that genuine transformation requires, and begin to see the dream as a dream. But the world keeps us busy. Work consumes the majority of our healthy waking hours. What remains is carved up by distraction, consumption, the management of an identity, bodily maintenance, the chronic low-grade dissatisfaction that this culture cultivates and then offers to resolve with whatever it is selling next. And beneath all of that, fear and anxiety consume what little is left, and the accumulated weight of living inside a reality that strikes without warning and rarely gives us space to fully recover. Each one is a vent through which energy bleeds away continuously, faster than we can recover it. And so the surplus necessary for awakening remains just beyond reach, generation after generation. The ancient Gnostics who despised this world were not spiritually failing. They were seeing accurately. What they named was not the true creation itself, but the specific architecture of exhaustion that each of us encounters when attempting to hold the frequencies the transformation requires. Their contempt was the honest response of people with enough vision to recognize what the energy drain was doing to them. That is a different and more precise diagnosis than simply they hated the world. The brutality of this distorted apparatus is real, and it deserves to be named plainly. And every voice that has been shaped by the density of this world tells us the same thing, that this is simply how things are. What goes up must come down. Everything that lives must die, dust to dust. The struggle to reach a position within this world where the siphon happens a little more slowly, where a person gets to enjoy some portion of what this world offers, is a battle most do not fully win. And those who do sometimes discover, late, that the position they spent themselves reaching did not actually exempt them from anything fundamental, and yet the masters completed the work. Across traditions, across centuries, in cultures as far apart as it is possible to be, there are documented accounts of those who reached the other side of the transformation, not after death, but within a lifetime, through specific sustained practice that restored them to a condition capable of holding the frequencies required. The completion is real, and the reason this idea persists is that the fluid reality the masters were reaching is not somewhere else. It saturates this one at every point, and those who seek, find. But the goal of all of this isn't escapism. It's something far more radical than escape. It is the restoration of this world to what it actually is. The kingdom of heaven that Yeshua described is not a realm somewhere beyond this one. It is the creation, returned to its original fluidity, a perfect balance of light and dark, neither so contracted that it destroys consciousness, nor so expansive that form dissolves. The goal of the light body is not to escape the dream, but to awaken from it. And once that awakening is complete, the old dream dissolves and the dreamer is no longer subject to its terms. Total freedom, in Castaneda's language. The kingdom, in Yeshua's. That destination is available now, and the signal is already here, saturating this reality at every point. But we must first be restored to a condition where we can receive it. In my next video, we are going to descend from the architecture of the larger reality into the architecture of the human form, and trace precisely how this world, through what it does to us simply by living inside it, produces the specific conditions that prevent that vessel from holding what it was designed to hold, which is eternal life. The world is a dream. The dream can be changed. We are dreamers who have forgotten who and what we are. And the remembering begins, always, with seeing clearly where we actually are. Welcome to the resonance.